but it was storming. I
Oh,
think
well,
we are live. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, Gratitude. And this week, Jamila decided, what the hell? This is live. She's live, joining us from an Uber. But what's important is she's here. She is showing up as she always does, regardless of what her schedule's like. So I'm very grateful that she does show up.
thank you,
Yeah.
Anissa. It's just, I think from week to week, from month to month, life is just getting more and more hectic. But if, like you say, we don't make the time to show up, we will just keep on missing out on important things. So I'm sorry you've got some commentary in the background, but I'm almost home now, so we should have a much better connection.
And while we're waiting for Dr. Letitia Wright, I think what I'm going to do in the meantime is just read a little bit about her bio while we wait for her. There's one particular piece that I read. I was so excited when I read it. So let's read. Let's talk. What are we talking about today? It's mastering the art of the pivot. How many of you can relate to either being laid off from work or going through a divorce or not getting the promotion that you wanted? I'm sure many of us can relate to that. Sometimes we don't always get what we planned, but it somehow works out better in our favor. So today we're going to talk about what to do when the door closes, but your true calling then evolves. Dr. Letitia Wright is a TV producer, a speaker, and the brilliant mind behind Wright Place TV. From Doctor of Chiropractic to 25 years on air, Dr. Wright shares her journey through reinvention, resilience, and redefining success. Whether you're facing a career shift or wondering how to transform setbacks into legacy, trust me, you're going to want to join us in this episode today. This episode will be for you. A little bit about our guest. I pray that we're going to have her on. I'm not sure where she is yet, but we've asked Marissa, our virtual assistant, to just check in on our guest. As I've mentioned, she's an executive producer and host of Wright Place TV, which is run on cable. For those not in, this is not for the South Africans, this is just on television for over 22 years. A former chiropractor, Dr. Wright transitioned into the media world. Wright Place TV is in its 23rd season with a bandwidth spanning over 6.5 million homes throughout Southern California and beyond. In addition to her media work, she is a top 100 crowdfunding expert in the United States, focusing on putting funding and money into the hands of women and minority owned businesses. As America's crowdfunding strategist, Dr. Letitia Wright was part of the 2018 November faculty of the Accelerated Business Schools in Thailand. In March of 2018, she was honored by the All Ladies League and the Women's Economic Forum in Holland. She also joined the Wave based in Holland to help combat women's economics around the globe. Dr. Wright taught at Dallas Startup Week 2016. Soon after that event, she was contacted and traveled to, I think it's Maui, on an open invitation to present and speak into the lives of the participants for Maui and Oahu, I would think it is, Startup Week 2016. She has been on the list of the top 100 crowdfunding experts for the last 4 years and was invited to President Obama's Global Entrepreneur Summit Summer 2016. Wow, what an amazing resume. And I think I read somewhere she is the Oprah, she's been named the Oprah of California. I see there are two comments. Let's see what the comments are. In an Uber, oh, come on, Shabila, showing up. Yes, very impressive, very impressive. So we're waiting for it just to come back on. I mean, for those that can relate to this, I can certainly share a little bit of my story while we wait on our guest. I was laid off from work, retrenched in 2020, October, and not like most would have responded. I was celebrating the idea of having time to for myself to revisit, reinvent, rethink what it is that I would love to do with my life. So I decided, well, what better time to now finally go and pursue the very path that I am now on, which I had qualified for almost 15 years ago now, which is to be a self leadership coach. Nothing fancy about it. It's about being practicing self mastery. And that's really what I was quite passionate about. Jamila is back. So, Jamila, I'm just sharing a little bit about my own when the door closed, what happened for me. And it became the catalyst to do the very work that I'm doing now. In fact, the very passion project of showing up here every week on a Friday, serving and looking for nothing in terms of reciprocation other than how do we touch lives? How do we show up authentically? How do we reconnect to the part of ourselves that when we otherwise possibly employed or stuck in a system, we are unlikely to pursue that path of our purpose or our passions. For you, I think, Jamila, you could certainly also resonate with reinvention and when the door closed, what happened for you in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely, Anissa. And I think, it happens in all of our lives. Just that our stories are a little bit different, the timelines are a little bit different, but we're constantly evolving. And sometimes when we get too comfortable in our lives, it can look like something really scary. Thank you, Ronald. Lovely to see you today, as always. Um, yeah, we get comfortable that it becomes so scary. A change is something that you really don't want to embrace. But what I think it's difficult because when we don't venture out and when we don't put on that brave um, face to accept and to see what these opportunities might hold for you, you can actually lose out in life, lose out on a lot of amazing, incredible experiences that actually
Hmm.
shape and grow who you are and make you a different, better human being. And I always have the belief that we only see this much of the picture, and there's a
Hmm.
higher being who has something bigger and better planned for us. And we've had this conversation before, Anissa, and I truly, truly believe that we need to have faith in that. Have
Hmm.
faith and surrender and let go and allow ourselves to be taken with the current in which, we are meant to float down towards.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, it's very scary, but it's something that builds you up and makes you better as a person. It makes you stronger. And it allows you to discover who you truly are. Um,
Yeah,
so that's been
definitely.
my experience, yeah. And as you know, it doesn't matter which phase of your life you're in or which version of yourself you're at, but if you embrace the change, it only has positive outcomes with it.
What's that saying? With change should feel like it's as good as a
As a
holiday.
holiday.
No, it's not
Absolutely.
as simple as that. Let's be honest. It's not. Change is difficult. Change is scary. Change creates doubts, fear, feelings of imposter syndrome. Change creates that feeling of, am I going to belong? So there's a lot of dynamics at play when we are faced with a door that closes. I mean, when you think about divorce, it's not easy because you go into this partnership thinking it's till death do us part. And then when you come to the realization of, well, hold on, you have to now close that door, it is terrifying. It's debilitating. It's almost crippling because you're losing a part of yourself that you thought was going to be indefinite, and it's in the time that you lose yourself, in inverted commas, that you actually rediscover who you truly were meant to be. Because everybody speaks about divorce as you're going to be lonely and it's going to be difficult. Single motherhood is not easy, and sure, it's not. But nobody speaks about what you discover and what you find and what you get to relish in, and the joys of reconnecting with who you truly are and being able to establish boundaries. Those are things that people don't face or speak about openly. They speak about the taboo-ness of you closing that door to a complete family, but complete in whose perspective or opinion. Because sometimes when people stay together, the doors might be wide open, but it's also banging and slamming, and it's tumultuous in so many ways. Whereas I'd rather have the door closed and have peace behind that door. Wouldn't you say, Jamila?
Yeah, I agree with you absolutely, Anisa. And I think that we have to look at how we see ourselves,
Hmm.
and how society grooms us to see ourselves when it comes to looking at who you are and how successful you are as an individual. Because I feel that, you know, it's actually some sort of a paradox there, because society grooms you not to be the individual that you are or to discover and uncover. They don't see you as being someone as successful. It's never ever about who you are truly as a person. To be seen as successful, especially for a woman, or maybe a man, as well, you have to be somebody who's accomplished. You have to be a professional person. You've got to be a good mother. You've got to be a good wife. You've got to be a good daughter-in-law, a good daughter, whatever it is. All of those have outside. It's all outward, and it's related to other people. Nobody commends you on who you are as a person, who you are growing to be as a person, and seeing that as being successful. So nobody's going to commend me for doing something that I'm passionate about. You know, that society tends to see as something as being selfish. Okay, so I've experienced this in my in my lifetime, where if you're not married by a certain age, that's seen as some sort of a failure. If you are married but you haven't had children by a certain age, then that's another failure. But nobody's going to say, wow, Jamila, you are so successful because you've pursued your goal or your passion to play paddle, or you've pursued whatever your passion is. Nobody sees that as a success. They rather see it as your role, other than who you truly are as yourself, as being that success. So I think it's very important for us to know ourselves, to become comfortable with ourselves, and to have that confidence within ourselves to be the best that we can be, and then see how that relates to every other aspect of our life.
Yeah, Jamila, I think because when we don't, the part of knowing ourselves is so critical when the perceived rejection of a door closing or a season ending or a relationship ending, whatever the end of it might be, if you don't know yourself intimately and you haven't learned to love all parts of yourself, a lot of that inner child wounds and trauma may show up that
Mm.
may look like abandonment or rejection. I see our dear sister Sumaya Hussein, whose house I am doing my life from today, is saying, I admire both of you for showing up every week and sharing from your wisdom and life experiences. Thank you, Sumaya,
Thank
who's
you
just
so
in the other room.
much. She
So
should have come on then.
she
She
should
should have
have joined
joined us.
us. I mean, Sumaya, you're most welcome to join us. I know you can hear me somewhere, somehow. But yeah, thank you for that comment.
And
So
Lisa, I was watching this interview yesterday, an Oprah interview, and she was
uh-huh.
interviewing this woman who lives in Mauritania, okay,
Where is that?
in West Africa somewhere. I think it's West Africa. And they were having the most incredible conversation, and this goes back to what how society perceives who we are.
Mm.
And the whole conversation was about women in Mauritania who were divorced and how they are seen in the eyes of the community. So, if you are married and divorced, you become very, very valued by other men. And the
Whoa, whoa.
more
Wait,
divorces
wait, wait,
you
wait.
have,
Pause that for a moment. I don't know if I heard correctly. If you are divorced,
so in our society, when we divorce, you've had this experience, right? You almost as if you've got a
yes,
scarlet
you
letter on
labeled.
you, right? You labeled, you stereotyped, and this continues for years and years and years. Men, unfortunately, and I'm going to say it, feel that you're available to them. Obviously, not to marry, maybe some to marry, but you're just available. And women don't really want to have you in their space because they feel threatened by you because you are now single.
Yes.
And this has been my experience. In Mauritania, when you are married and divorced, whether it's one time, two times, the more divorces you are, the more men want you and want you to marry you. So it's completely seen totally differently
Wow.
from what we experience here. And then they brought up that if you were overweight, what they find very attractive are the women's ankles. And if it's thick, then that's a huge point of attraction for men. Um,
I'm beyond, like, I'm listening to you and I'm like, okay.
apparently,
So
if
there's
you
no, so there's almost a
stretch
common,
marks, if you
wait,
have
wait.
stretch marks, that's seen as something really appealing as well. So it's totally a completely different point of view from what we are used to and the way that our societies see women, from a perspective of whether they're successful or not, from a perspective of appeal, from a perspective of being in demand. And this was something that was on the Oprah show and an interview that was carrying on. I'm going to find the link and put it onto our chat. But it's so interesting. But these are all perceptions, right? Created by communities and societies over the years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing from that interview is that there's almost an honoring having walked a journey and have had the courage to say, I am now closing that door for
Yes.
whatever the reason behind the divorce or the separation may have been. And whether you've put on the weight, you have as you described, the thicker ankles, whatever that is, but there's an honoring that is happening of the woman. And I find that to be so powerful and profound in so many ways, because in our space, as you've just said, and in most environments, it's you are actually more, you failed. You couldn't keep a marriage together. You didn't try hard enough. You are the cause of the breakup, whatever those may be. So we're
Yes.
talking closed doors today. We're talking about reinvention. I have no idea where our guest is. Marissa has tried to reach out. It is pretty interesting. Something may have happened because she certainly had good intentions to join. She did promote the live stream. So let's be patient and maybe she joins us for the second half of our
Mm.
segment. But coming back to again, mastering that art of saying when something's not actually a rejection and it's a redirection or it's about reinvention, I feel that reinvention can happen at any time in any context. Whether you have been in an employed capacity like you and I have been, and we have got our battle scars of working in the corporate landscapes, the reality is that in and of itself was an experience that was necessary for us. We would not be who we are today to try and be change makers within environments to serve mental health and well-being in the way that we are, regardless of what our labels are, whether you call the therapist, psychologist, or a coach. The intent is the same. We want to help people return back home to themselves, to their authenticity, to let go of the mask that they're wearing, to let go of the illusionary, superficial lives that many people are walking around doing. But what do you feel, holds people back to rather stay where a door is literally already closed, but they end up staying in abusive relationships, in abusive work, toxic environments, poor leadership, whatever the environment is dictating, they find themselves still stuck there. Do you feel it comes back to knowing self and self respect and loving self? And the combination of that will make us more intentional around saying, this door closing is rather a gift and an opportunity to reinvent myself rather than I have failed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, Anissa, that, a lot of people come from a space of fear, and again, it's about change, and change is scary. And you feel rather in a relationship, maybe rather the devil you know than the one you don't. When it comes to, a space of employment, where else am I going to find a good job? It's going to
Yes.
be a risk for me to leave this space. Will it work out? Won't it work out? And
Mhm.
then a lot of us also just can't see ourselves failing at something.
Mm.
And I say failing in inverted commas because we feel this need that if we get into a marriage, we have to make it successful, irrespective of how we're feeling, what we're feeling. And then you also feel like you are letting your family down, you're letting your community down, and that you're being selfish in a way if you choose to do this. You and I have both been down these paths before. And I
Yes.
think it's a matter of truly, truly knowing yourself, and working on who you are and understanding that it's not. Sumayya's waiting for an invitation. You don't need an
It's
invitation,
an
darling.
invitation.
Always welcome, as with everybody else. I mean, Anissa, we would absolutely love for people to join us. Um, so
And
no doubt.
Sumaya works in this space and has a wealth and breadth of experience of working with people in this therapeutic realm, in helping them rediscover and navigate back that place, that divine place to themselves. And so it would be wonderful to have her on as a subject matter expert if she doesn't choose to share
I
any of her story. But
think Sumaya should move to the next room and join us, Nisa, and come and
Samaya, you most
experience
welcome
this
to pull up
space
a
with us.
chair and come join in your own home next to me. So wherever you are right now, whether you're on the couch inside, come and join me.
Yeah. Anissa, I think we have these expectations of ourselves as well. And then we
Mm,
think about the expectations and the roles that we are meant to play in our families' lives, in our communities' lives. And it's a daunting place to be when you want to actually make that change, when you realize this is a situation that's not working for me anymore. And how much am I willing to sacrifice? Or
Yes.
what price is, high enough for me to decide whether I'm going to make a change or not make a change. For me, it was something that came 10 years later. For you, you were in your marriage for how many years before you decided?
18 years.
Well,
18 years.
each person comes with their own different timelines. And I think there's that moment when you realize that, okay, I can't keep the status quo any longer. Now, whether I like it or not, I have to try and move forward and step into the space that, yes, is risky, that, yes, is difficult. Like you say, it's not easy, it's scary. But the benefits of it do come eventually.
But
And
sometimes, I don't believe people can take that step on their own. Sometimes it requires loss, something really bad, unfortunately, to happen. What does she say now?
she's on her way, she's buying her ticket to Mauritania.
I love that. So I feel many people don't know how to take that step. Um, and sometimes it is just an experience that's going to happen, that's going to force our hand, whether it is, here's the hard part, whether it is infidelity in a relationship that causes the relationship to actually end, whether it is that being laid off from work or retrenchment, whether the business isn't doing well, if you're a business owner and all of a sudden things are not, panning out as you needed it to be, maybe you will have significant loss in the beginning. Does it mean you stop that position or being self-employed, or does it mean you redirect and you navigate differently in the process? So all of this for me is around, when the door closes, it's not actually a negative thing. It's an opportunity. But the frame of reference is not always, this is happening for me and it's opportunity. This is actually, I'm a victim. Why is this happening to me? And we've had this chat on this segment, you and I alone, and with many of our guests. When you're in the victim consciousness, where it's you against the world, is that music on your side? Are we having a
I'm
party?
trying to find the link so that I can attach it. Sorry about that.
I thought we were introducing something new today. We certainly can. You
We're
do
going to put
know.
some music on and everybody's going to get up and dance and let go of.
So we can, in StreamYard has added something new now. So we can add a link, we can present, we can add a little bit of a video. For those that know, I do this authentically. I haven't got fancy equipment. I'm sitting with my laptop or my phone with whatever lighting behind me. So we show up in the moment. So if there is ever something, Jamila, you wanted to showcase in the moment, we can certainly do that because StreamYard is
Fantastic.
allowing for that now.
Okay,
So
great.
so coming back to the point, I am making peace that we ain't going to have our guest here today. I was really looking forward to the Oprah of California today, but I suppose everything is in divine timing, and we'll figure out what happened and get her back on again. So apologies for those that may have been waiting anxiously to hear her insights and her expertise. But we certainly hope that we will do justice to today's conversation, Jamila and I. So, coming back to that victim consciousness, how do we get people to not see the door closing as their demise, as the nail in their coffin, as a grieving state? How do we move that for them?
I think,
What
Anissa,
advice do you have?
I think like you said, it normally takes some sort of an event for you to like catapult you towards making a change. And that's scary as well in
Mm,
itself, going through that, whatever it may be, like you said, whether it's, infidelity, whether it's you being retrenched from work or whatever it is. But something that I've noticed about the human being and the human nature is that we are innately creatures that are determined to survive, irrespective
yeah.
of what situation we might find ourselves in, what circumstances we are experiencing. That is our initial response, is
Mm,
survival.
mm,
And in that survival, some of us are quick to react to it and to change as the situation changes, some
mm,
not so quick. But innately, we all have that in common, is that
mm,
we are creatures of survival. And
mm.
these instincts kick in one form of or another, whether
Yes.
it's becoming an entrepreneur and making sure that we find the means to be able to survive in this world, from a financial perspective, how we take care of our kids, how we take responsibility for our kids, and just embracing that change, um, to be able to survive. And it just depends on the timelines of different people. But it certainly doesn't mean that it isn't something that we all possess within ourselves. I truly
Mm.
believe that it's something that we do. Um, it just takes different timelines for different people to adjust accordingly to the changes in the situation. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I remember my daughter being very upset. When you mentioned kids now, I was just thinking about how kids find it very difficult when doors close for them because that level of emotional maturity isn't there just yet. In saying that, I find myself thinking there are many adults that also don't have that level of emotional maturity when
yeah,
this happened. It's again the victim consciousness that I've mentioned earlier.
right.
But I remember her being completely upset that she did not get placed in the high school that she wanted to attend. And interestingly enough, she's now next year going to be at grade 10. And, she's doing the American standard schooling at the school she's attending right now. But the direction she wants to go into is psychology. And South African institutions do not accept the GED standard. So we kind of back to square one to say, okay, so what happens next year for her? Because she needs to revisit now where she's going to attend school, which means it's a change, which means
Mm,
it's revisiting the schools that closed the door on her before. And I asked her the question, I said to her, the school that you were that upset about, which is a beautiful, well-known school in Cape Town called Renish High School, and she said, "No, that school's not for me. Not in who they are and what they represent,
mm,
but only that wisdom only came afterwards."
mm,
So I want to tap into sort of how do we find the wisdom in the doors closing, similar to what is the gift and opportunity, but how do we tap into wisdom when these doors close? Is it knowing what our value systems are? Because values are quite an important thing. Because if our values are completely misaligned, I know we will never have complete alignment of values, whether it is with friendships, romantic relationships, professional relationships, or any context. You're not always going to be on the same value system,
mm,
but there's common ground nonetheless. So
mm,
for her to be able to now tap into this wisdom and say, "Hey, next year if I have to choose, they're not on my they're not on my selection list."
mm.
Have you had similar experiences, Jamila? And I mean, what
Yeah.
can you share with our audience today on a door that closed, but your
I think,
wisdom later guided you?
Yeah, I think, Anissa, what's important, and like I'll speak from a kid's perspective as well as from an adult's perspective. But something that I noticed with my son is that he also battled a lot when it came to the divorce and just finding his role and his purpose and his identity in it, because that changes a lot, because you grow up and you expect to be part of a family and you don't expect for your parents to be divorced, and society just mandates that also. So when you find yourself as someone who's not within that system, within that upbringing, within that conformity, you stick out completely. And as a divorced woman, that's the case for sure. As a divorced man, I'm sure that might be the case, but also for the child, because this is out of the norms of what they expect their lives to be. And for me, as I've told you before, my son battled with this. And on top of it, we moved from where we were living his whole life to a different city, new people, a completely different environment where we didn't have any family, any friends, no support structure whatsoever. So it was, it was daunting to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
When he when we moved to Joburg, and the first school that he attended, that was almost like a replica of where we used to be. So the community itself was not really open to kids that had come from a divorced background, or a woman who was a single woman divorced, and you didn't fit in the mold. And so I found it very difficult to settle down, and I really had issues with him. Going to school, and just being settled as a human being. And then we changed schools, and that environment was a lot more conducive to our situation, where you had a lot of kids from all sorts of different backgrounds, where there were kids from divorced families, there were kids that grew up in a single family all their lives. And the difference there was that he was accepted for who he was and not for the circumstances that he had, found himself in. So I think it's really, really important as individuals, as parents, of children, to find your tribe, to find your people, to find your community. And in finding that and having that acceptance, it gives you a different type of peace and acceptance of yourself and the situation that you find yourself in. So Muhammad just changed completely. He did a complete 180 the minute that he started at his new school. He found friends, he was excited about going to school, and his personality just completely changed because he was accepted in that surrounding. So I think your community that you have and you choose makes a huge difference in this. It makes a huge difference in having people supporting you for the decisions that you've made, in having people trust the decision that you've made and not look at you from a perspective of judgment. um, that's been something that's really, really helped both of us. And I found that initially I would just isolate myself. I wouldn't want to be in any of the circles. In many of the circles, I wasn't accepted in any event. So I lived for many years isolated, and I thought this was a healthy existence for me, but it actually isn't, until I started to find my own community, my own tribe, who had the same values as me, who had the same um, insights and opinions. And not to say that you want to find people who are exactly the same as you, because you
Sure.
need people who are, have different perspectives on life and on different matters. But you kind of find your vibration, people who are on your wavelength, and that makes change a lot easier, because you're already coming from a space where you supported and heard.
There's so many things that I've picked up from what you just said. And I mean, I'm hearing a sense of belonging. I'm hearing that there's around common ground, community,
Mm.
sacred holding, sacred sisterhood, given that I'm in Sumaya's space.
Yes.
And we were actually, and you spoke vibration and energy. And sometimes when we are meant to be moving into the next phase of our lives, in whichever door is being closed in that season or phase, you'll energetically feel it. Whether you're willing to listen to it is entirely up to you. But energetically, you are being forced, and vibrationally, you'll feel it. Our body gives us the signals when it's time to close the door yourself, even. But
Mm.
we don't. And we've already concluded why, as per our earlier chat, it's fear, doubt, insecurity. But then you also said finding community. And I agree with you fully. It's not about being the same in our values, but we can resonate to one another based on where each one is in their life phase or with what their stories are. And that's why the stories and being so authentic and real is pivotal to any meaningful, harmonious relationship, because you showing up in your truth and you don't feel judgment is going to happen. Compassion and empathy and love and kindness. And that's the beauty of a sacred community, or feeling like you belong, that you're not alone in it.
Mm.
Because sometimes we even shame ourselves because we didn't know how to close the door. And I mean, you know that you're a co-creator of how things are going or how people are actually treating you within that space, but you don't want to close the door until somehow they even slam the door closed. And some of us, even when doors are slammed closed, we still go back for more, because that feeling of feeling less than or not like I belong or I don't fit here, you almost compromise who you are to fit the mold. And this is where people pleasing is born from, and being this perfect good girl syndrome or good guy syndrome is born from, because you just want to feel like you belong. And when you are feeling any of those feelings of not like you're fitting, it's actually your invitation to stand out, to come into yourself, to excel, to transform your life in ways that is you can't even comprehend, you can't even imagine. But it's the invitation, and that's what we have this segment for. It's that hero's journey.
And
Heroes go through difficult times all the time, right?
oh, for sure, absolutely. And I think you made a very important a point, Anissa, is that feeling of not belonging and listening to your body. But I think that what your body is actually saying to you, or the message it's trying to convey to you, is that it's time you started to belong to you. And that's where, unfortunately, most of us find ourselves. We don't belong to ourselves. We don't even know who we are. And it's until we can make that decision to reconnect to who we are and be true to ourselves, be authentic to ourselves, then only will we start to be able to belong somewhere else. Um, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying spot on, because this is the part that gets juicy for me. You're never gonna feel a door's closed or you've been rejected or you feel abandoned when you belong to yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, yesterday I had some quite intense conversations with a peer coach, two peer coaches who are also very dear friends to me. And it prompted a post that I wrote yesterday. I don't know if you saw the post. And I said, it's a short post, so I'll read the gist of it to you now. And I wrote there, we say we want peace, yet sometimes we're the ones holding the match. How many
Mm,
fires have we fueled with our ego only to watch what mattered most burn to ash?
mm,
Too often we hold tight to grudges or harsh judgments and unspoken resentment, blissfully unaware that we are not protecting our peace, but we're actually prolonging our pain. Real courage lies not in being right, but being introspective. When we pause to understand our triggers as signals, not threats. I'll just want to read that part again. Our triggers as signals, but not as threats, and
mhm.
recognizing them as echoes of our inner child's unmet needs. That's really the space. I'm not going to read the entire one, but it is being able to start knowing where are you not empathetic towards yourself? Where don't you love yourself? Where are you shaming yourself? Because when that door closes, and I started off when you were still not here, trying to come back onto the segment, I said when I was retrenched, I was celebrating it because I knew in my heart of heart, this is a redirection, you
Yeah.
know. Yes, the way the process unfolded was not ideal, but it also taught me a lot of what my triggers were and
Mm,
how I was co creating whatever was happening in my own space. And the irony is that the company was very values aligned, but the level of leadership was not necessarily. And yet I
mm.
wanted to stay in that environment because I did not, thank you, Ronald.
Thank you, Ronald.
I wasn't in my own truth. I didn't love myself enough. I didn't even know how to belong to myself in those moments. And
Mm,
my desire to be validated, seen, and accepted was like more important than how I was being treated, right? And I almost wanted to prove people wrong if they were
yeah.
not making me feel like I belong or fit. I wasn't ever one, even in my corporate days, to hang with the cliques or the crowds to fit in. I always felt like the odd one out. I'm not going to lie. In
Mm,
corporate, I always felt like I didn't fit.
yeah.
I could be as loud and vibrant as I am here. I was always very much friendly and could talk to the whole world. I connected with everyone. So here's an interesting fact. Even though I was able to connect flawlessly with anyone, internally, I felt like I didn't fit those environments.
Mm,
So when somebody didn't treat me well, or I was excluded from a particular party, event, or group, or meeting a client, or whatever the context, I felt so small and rejected and abandoned in those moments.
and not good enough.
And not good enough, not worthy enough.
Mm,
And maybe it also wasn't the people, let me just share the other harsh truth there. A lot of what I was feeling was a projection of my own stuff. And so
yeah.
when doors close, I wasn't willing to look at, was this my own stuff? Because we don't. We want to blame everyone else. Everyone.
And we don't want to look at it as our own stuff because it's seen as a failure again, right? It's
Yes.
seen as you not being successful, you not being fitting the right mold. Um, and this is what we have to come to peace with about ourselves, within ourselves, is that
Hmm.
we're not perfect. We're absolutely not perfect, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we cannot only focus on what we view and what society views as the acceptable values within
Yes.
ourselves. We have our shadow side.
Yes.
We've ignored it. We've acted as if it's the stepsister, the ugly stepsister, and we don't want anything to do with it. But there comes a time when you have to face it. You've got to
Yes.
ask yourself, why am I getting triggered? What is it? about me that I'm not accepting about myself. And the minute you start to accept those inadequacies, I guess you could call them, about yourself, because that's how you view it,
Yeah.
and you start to accept it, you begin to understand it better.
Yeah.
And only by, first of all, being aware and understanding, can we then do something to change. Okay. And you don't have to change drastically either. It's normally with the awareness comes the acceptance, and then that teaches you how to respond
Mm,
rather than
mm.
to react to certain things. So, knowing yourself, every part of who you are, is so important, Anissa. It allows you to distinguish between behavior that's acceptable and unacceptable for yourself, first and foremost, but it gives you that crystal clear perception when you're looking and engaging with other people, because it brings a certain amount of empathy and compassion when you interact with other people.
Yeah, yeah, that was also a part of what I said is when we meet others with empathy, we begin to see not enemies, but fellow humans navigating their own wounds, their own silences, their own longing to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. So the way forward is absolutely to learn to lead yourself first and knowing your own story, because that's a catalyst to heal that fire within yourself so that you don't burn others with it, because peace begins when our own inner war ends. And I don't think we realize when that door is closed, whatever we are feeling in that moment, that we can't tap into the wisdom because we haven't healed
Mm,
that that inner child that has not been seen or heard and understood, or didn't feel like they belong, or didn't wasn't nurtured, wasn't loved, didn't receive kindness, don't know how to do that for themselves. So
mm,
it's very difficult when somebody else throws that at them. They see themselves being once again a victim of that experience that's on repeat. But it's only up to us to end that, because we inadvertently, perpetuate these cycles. I'm just reading Ronald's comment. I finally walked out of a customer account, never to return. I did not deserve how I was treated, and they did not deserve a person of my quality. I paid the price and deserve respect. Thank you. That's very valid and apt in this conversation as well.
mm.
The abuse from clients, or the abuse from a manager or a leader, or if the abuse from our friendships that are takers, and the abuse from our kids. I mean, I had this conversation with Sumaya earlier on, where I said it's supposed to be give and take in relationship, but sometimes even in our kids' circumstances, they know how to take only. But
Yeah,
we create that.
yeah,
We are the co-creators of that.
for sure, absolutely. And I think, it's abuse to yourself as well,
Mm.
because you go out, and Ronald says that he finally walked out. Okay. And we tend to look again outwardly, and we look and blame people. We blame our bosses. We blame our, ex-spouses. We blame. We put blame everywhere else for accepting the situation that we are in. Right.
Yes.
I find that it's an abuse on yourself. And the time that he walked out never to return, and he realized that he did not deserve this, that's when the abuse stopped.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
when he realized this. I don't need to do this. I don't need to subject myself to this any longer. And that's when change happens, Anissa, is when
Mm.
you take that responsibility, and you take that blame, and you decide, okay, it's in my hands now. I can choose to stay here, or I can continue blaming everybody else while I stay in this. I found myself in that situation as well, where I blamed, oh God, it's because my family insisted that I stay. Oh, we have our guest back.
So, We want to welcome you to the last part of this conversation, but I think it would be an unfair disadvantage. But we have how many minutes remaining? We have about five. So please share with us if it was a time zone difference thing, because I know you were excited to join us today.
Yes, yes, it definitely was a time zone thing. I am in Houston, Texas.
Yeah,
So I apologize for the off timing. I'd love to be invited back. I think it was not placed on my calendar correctly because it was placed at 9:30 my time. So, which is what it is in Houston, Texas. So I do apologize for missing out with you beautiful ladies.
Oh,
I don't know. Like, it's very apt the conversation where maybe the door closed or it didn't happen in that time. Maybe it was not meant to happen today. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely believe that, things work out as they should. At least I got to say hi to you, got to see you guys, and I assure you we will have some great conversations moving forward. So I am appreciative for any time I have with anyone who invites me onto their show. Time is life, your audience time is life, your time is life, and I definitely appreciate it. So all is well.
I do want to ask you something. I mean, we got you here right now. So if you don't mind staying for the five or however minutes we stay on, we're not going to cut off just as is. But somewhere I read somewhere you're the Oprah of California.
Yes, there's a lady out in Virginia that kind of gave me that tag a while ago, and that's how she would describe me to other people because I was really heavy doing a lot of interviews, bringing in a lot of stars, actors, and I was just really on my grind at that time. Very unusual story. This is a woman that I met on Twitter. She is also hosting her own show, and her topic is jobs and the job market. So she also broadcasts on the local news in Virginia, where they have a segment talking about, hey, what's the job market, and what can you do to get a job and move your career up. That's her whole thing. Her tag is the career engineer. And so we've been friends. I've gone back and forth to her events. She came to California. There was just a lot of, interaction. We just got along really well. And probably 4 or 5 years into our friendship, I met her father. And we forget that our married friends don't have the same last name they were born with. So her last name, she was married, was different than her dad, who was a last name of Good. And so I was like, oh, good. A couple of generations above me, we have goods in our family. I was like, I was just talking with him. I wasn't talking with her and saying, like, where in the country his family came from. And he was giving me the places. And I was like, yeah, that's the same places our goods are from. Dig a little deeper and realize that she and I share the same three times great grandmother.
wow.
So we
Wow.
are literally cousins. And then this past Thanksgiving, I invited the oldest member of my section of the family from Chicago to come and have Thanksgiving with us here in Houston. And she came and she brought this incredible gift. So she keeps, and this is the older relative who always is talking to genealogists and, building this, forever building this family tree thing. And she brought us a book called Goodnight, Sarah Good. Sarah Good was the first African American woman to get a patent for a product. And this is our mutual relative that the lady who calls me, the California Oprah, she is our mutual relative that created that.
Man.
And so it's an amazing story, and our connection is just so good and tight, and just she's so supportive. But that really helped people understand what my focus was at that time. And just how I was really just turning out shows. I was one of those people that I'd be in the studio and do like 6 shows a day. I mean, I was just a workhorse. So, it's a funny little thing. So I hope that entertains you.
Mm.
That relationship has blossomed into something super special.
Wow.
Dr. Letitia, I mean, that story is just beautiful. So I almost feel like we can just stay a little bit longer on
Yes,
Jamila.
I'm available because I thought I had a whole hour, so I'm at your disposal.
Maybe you can tell us, I mean, your pivot led to your true calling, because that's the caption of today's conversation. What to do when the door closes. Now, I'm not sure that a door closed for you, but that's really what our topic was about today. From Doctor of Chiropractic to 25 years on air. How did that pivot happen? Was it a door that closed, or was it a call to adventure?
I think it was a little bit of both. I definitely respond to a call to adventure. So don't call me with a good time. Don't call me telling me you're doing something and do I want to come? Because I will answer the call to adventure. But I think it was a little bit of both, actually. As
Mm,
I've always wanted to be a doctor. I've been telling people I'm going to be a doctor since I was 3 years old. So I literally grew up to be exactly what I said I was going to be. But in my practice, I found this struggle to really make it, or just a struggle. And I reached out to other doctors to get mentorship. Um, this is before YouTube. This is before there were any, self-help books. And
mm,
they turned me down. I met with 6 different doctors. One said, "You have kids at home, go home and be with your kids." One doctor said, "You live too close to me." She lived 2 towns over, and her business was 2 towns over.
mm,
She didn't want to help. Just no one was interested in helping me. And I was just struggling financially. There were just a lot of things. I knew how to be a doctor. I didn't know the business. There were just so many things I did not know.
mm,
So, at that same time, I was a guest on someone's local show. And it turned out really good. I mean, it was the magic. The hair was looking good. My makeup was looking good. I had my little peach silk suit on. And it just came out really good. So I went back to the studio and said, "How did this guy get a show? Like, how does all this work?" And at that time, the cable companies had to allow the community to have a channel and support community shows and show people how to use cameras and how to set up shows and everything. So I went through the classes and I literally learned every position from director, assistant director, sound, lighting. I didn't do a lot of lighting because I just told people, as a chiropractor, I don't want to risk accidentally burning my hands. This is my livelihood. I can't, I don't want to do that. So I wouldn't do a lot of lighting, but everything else I did: sound, camera, everything. I did it. I volunteered on other people's shows so that I could get really good at it. Then I came up with my own show concept, which turned into the Right Place, and really sharing business tips because I needed them for my business. My business wasn't doing great. However, the TV business was doing great. I was getting sponsorships and people were handing me checks. And so when Southern California Edison, the electric company in Southern California, gave me $1,000 check, I was like, "Oh, it's a business. It's And it just really clicked for me. And within 3 years, the TV business was in the black, the chiropractic, business was ho hum, and I made a decision to shut it down. And so I sat my family down because my family is super supportive. I had my parents there, everybody that's close to me there, and said, "Look, I've decided that I'm going to close the practice. It's just kind of struggling along, and I'm not getting the cash flow. I had the patient flow, but I didn't have the cash flow. I didn't know that there was a delay between attorneys settling your case and you getting paid for care. Meanwhile, your practice has to move forward.
mm, mm,
Didn't know all of that. Um, and so I closed it down to pursue TV, and I've never looked back. So in a way, it was a call to adventure. In a way, I felt like the door was closed. I know other people probably didn't feel that way,
mm,
but I've been able to travel the world. I've been to Australia several times. Only been in New Zealand as a stopover to Fiji, so I didn't get to see New Zealand. But just really travel the whole world with my television show, sharing about business, sharing about how women can begin to flourish in their business, and also talking about crowdfunding as a funding source for women in business because we don't get as much investment dollars as men
Yes.
do. And that's just the United States as well as across the world.
That's across the world.
Mhm.
Yes.
So everywhere I teach, I've been to Holland teaching, I've been to Canada, I've been to Grand Cayman, I've been to just literally around the world teaching. I taught Thailand. I'll be teaching again in Thailand this fall. And
When will
so
you be teaching in South Africa?
South Africa. Yeah.
you know what? I have got to actually, maybe we can talk about that and figure that out.
Yes.
My trip to South Africa was spoiled. Crazy story. Um, but so this, I don't always travel as Dr. Wright, but this time I did. And so the trip was from America to London, London to South Africa. On the American to London leg, a passenger passed away. And
Oh,
so there's a certain way that they make a call. It's not dramatic like in the movies. Is there a doctor on board? They don't do it like that because they don't want to call attention to someone who's severely sick because they don't want a crowd or they don't want people panicking. So there's a way that they do it. But they came and they said, "You're Dr. Wright. You're a physician." I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "We need to talk to you. Can you come with me?" I already know what that is. There's a way that they say it that if you're a physician or an RN, you know there's somebody in trouble. I'm thinking it's somebody in trouble. They just, want my input or whatever. And there's definitely sections. I was like in business section, so I wasn't in first class, but I wasn't in coach all the way in the back either. So I'm kind of in the middle section, and I walk up. This person, they're like, "We're afraid he's gone." So I do all the checks I can do, pulse, rub your knuckles on their chest, do the whole thing. This person is gone. So when we get to London, there's paperwork. There is paperwork you have to sign. And so that whole paperwork thing, there weren't that many planes going from London to South Africa. And so I actually missed my plane. The event that I was going to be speaking at, there wasn't a way that I could get there in time for my time slot. So I stayed in London, turned it into an adventure. I stayed in London and I sat in the hotel room first and recorded what I was going to say so that they could just play it the next.
Ah,
So I
yes.
did that first. And then it was just kind of unplanned. So I decided to take some public transportation and go downtown where Big Ben was. I don't know if you remember a few years back where young people and children were doing these marches all around the world. Do you remember that? Um, it was coordinated. It was all the same day. So I get down to downtown. Big Ben's closed. All the tours and the castle and everything else is all closed, right? Because there's going to be this parade. It didn't dawn on me. It was that parade. Something kids have been building up for months to do, and it was coordinated around the world. And so, because I was like, it's really crowded down here. This must be a poppin' tourist area. But what it was that there were extra people and roads blocked off. So it was an amazing time. Again, met people from all over the world because it was just this huge throng of people, bigger than what we normally do there. And I wound up coming back. So I did actually miss my event, miss my time in South Africa. Um, and it just was, I had no idea of the paperwork that goes with it. But,
Dr. Letitia, may I ask what event was it and what were you going to be speaking on?
it was a women's event, a world women's event. The conference was going to be in South Africa that year. I'm no longer with that organization, but they have women from all over the world, and it was going to be just an amazing time. And I was there to talk about crowdfunding and creating an economic engine from that that could sustain people. I also used to work with a man from a businessman from Malaysia that his dream was to help women thrive and have businesses. And his idea was for a lower income woman to provide her with a mechanical sewing machine so she wouldn't have to depend on electricity or spend money on that. Because he said a lot of them have sewing skills, and if they can have the sewing skills and do some things, they can change their family's economic status. And so he would buy sewing machines and donate them in India for women that needed, some kind of beadwork. And so just tying those ideas together. I love to bring organizations, especially women's organizations, love to help them create crowdfunding projects which can help the women in their community or create scholarships for the women in your organization.
You consent, Doctor.
Okay.
You consent. I know we have to end our live, but don't go away because I work as well as I suppose Jamila to some extent within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. As a coach, as a facilitator, as a systems design thinker, what I'm finding is exactly what you're saying. Are you still actively busy with crowdfunding? And
I
would this be something that you'd like to? I've just a gentleman from Italy is coming here. Well, he's here in South Africa already, and I've connected him in an entrepreneurial ecosystem that he's going to come and do a talk around the stuff that he's passionate about. But Jamila and I have been thinking about a conference, and I think this is such a salient topic that we could potentially lead with. Now, I know we have to end this live, but for those that heard this, please reach out to us if this is something that interests you. Whether you're male or female and you want to help create economic stability, sustainability, drive transformation within this space, it is something that I'm passionate about. It's something that Jamila, from an angle of mental health and well-being, that holistic approach, we are all keen to create the ripples and make impact. So if this is something you want to do, Dr. Letitia, I think we must definitely have you on within the full segment. We won't get our lines crossed. But then stay on this call for a moment because we'll give you more detail around the conference. Look at where your capacity is right now. And if there's any other like-minded people that you may have, you want to invite, we also are going to invite prior guests with certain subject matter expertise to this conference as well. Jamila, is there anything you want to say before we close off the official live?
I think that this connection was definitely meant to happen. We were very, very sad that you hadn't come on, but there you are, and we're very, very grateful for that. And obviously, we're going to have another full segment with you on. Like Anissa said, we're both passionate about equality in all its different aspects for women. So we definitely want to chat about that and possibly just see what your schedule is like and see how you can fit in with the conference. So we look forward to your next segment with us, as I'm sure the viewers do, and Anissa as well. But like Anissa said, let's just stay on until after the live does end so that we can just give you more background on what we're planning to do.
Thank you so much.
Any closing comment from you, Dr. Letitia, given the topic today was close when the closed door happens and mastering the pivot? One golden nugget.
I think one golden nugget is just remember that closed door does not stop you. It doesn't stop you. It's just redirecting you. So don't see that as I'm not supposed to have X. Oh, I'm not supposed to have X. Maybe you're supposed to have it a different way.
Love it. So until next time, we will have Dr. Letitia back with us. I love her energy, and I'm sure Jamila does too. We're going to end our live today. Thank you for spending this time with myself and Jamila and a little bit of teaser that you got to Dr. Letitia. And we will see you again next week, same time. And please, if you've watched the replay and have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to add it there.
Thank you,
Bye.
Anissa, and thank you to our guest, Sumaya. Almost guest. We